Welcome to Lighthouse, Homeschooling in Oregon with OCEANetwork.
Hey, Oregon homeschoolers, welcome back to the Lighthouse. Today, we're answering in detail an important question. What exactly are Oregon's homeschool testing requirements, and what do I really need to know? Should I be worried? We're going to walk through this in a very clear order. What exactly are Oregon's homeschool testing requirements, and how worried should I be? This is a really common question. We get it all the time. When we first launched this podcast, we asked in our Facebook group, Homeschooling in Oregon, what questions do you have for us? What can we answer for you? And this was one of the main ones. So we are going to walk through it in detail and hopefully answer many of your questions. But if you have additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. So first, when is the test required? Homeschool students in Oregon are evaluated at the end of grades 3, 5, 8, and 10. Testing must be completed by August 15th of those grade levels. How is grade level determined exactly? The Department of Education presumes that when you notify your ESD at age 6, your child begins kindergarten, unless you specifically inform them otherwise. So testing is based on that presumption. So you can start educating your child anytime you want, of course, and you may very well teach them at a higher grade level than what their testing level is. But for testing purposes, the rule to keep in mind is that kindergarten starts when your child is 6 by September 1st of that school year. That will help you determine which years you need to do testing and which ones you don't need to do testing. So end of grades 3, 5, 8, and 10. There are some exceptions to that rule. One of them is if you withdraw from a public or private school, you wait at least 18 months before doing the testing. Then your child tests at the end of the next scheduled grade. For example, let's say you withdraw your child near the end of 4th grade. 18 months later puts you at early 6th grade, so the next required test would be the end of their 8th grade year. What about interscholastic sports? This is the other exception. If your child wants to participate in OSAA interscholastic sports, then testing requirements change. Evaluations will happen annually. There will be a different deadline. They will require a higher percentile achievement, and so on. If you're looking at participating in interscholastic sports, you're going to want to plan well ahead, and we'll leave a link in the show notes to give those details to you. Now let's talk about what's on the test. Oregon requires one of 5 nationally normed standardized achievement tests, including the California Achievement Test, Comprehensive Test of Basic Skills, Iowa Test of Basic Skills, and so on. I'll leave you a list of them in the show notes. The 2 most recent versions of those approved tests are allowed. As far as what subjects are covered, it's really only language arts and math. There's no writing portion, so it really just covers reading, language, and math without a written portion other than them putting in what the answer is to their multiple choice question. This surprises many homeschoolers. They get really stressed out about, well, what about science and history and all of these other subjects? None of those are required for Oregon standardized testing for homeschoolers. Now, what about who administers the test? The test must be given by someone who's qualified, quote unquote, and not related to the child. And so there's a list of qualifications that you will find in the homeschool laws, and I'll leave the link so you can go check those out for yourself. But the Department of Education will publish a list of qualified administrators each July. Most homeschoolers find their testers by word of mouth. Many testers provide both private testing and group testing, and there are even some online options that you can do for testing. So definitely check out the different options available to you and pick what best suits your child. Now, what happens after the test? After the test, the results are mailed directly to you. And you are by law required to keep them on file and submit them to your ESD if it is requested. Now, some ESDs never request the test results, and some ESDs always request test results or include a blanket statement in their acknowledgement of your letter of intent saying that you should always submit your test results. So you need to know and pay attention to whether or not your ESD is requesting it. If they don't request it, just keep it on file and you can move on. What does your child need to perform on these tests? The legal benchmark for the standardized testing for homeschoolers is that you need to achieve at or above the 15th percentile for the entire test, not individual sections, but the whole test. If your child scores at or above the 15th percentile, you just continue homeschooling as usual and no additional oversight is required. Now, if your child scores below the 15th percentile, which I have to say, almost all homeschoolers score well above the 15th percentile. So most of the time, you're not going to have to worry about this at all. But if your child does score below the 15th percentile, then the Oregon law includes a structured support process. If a child scores below the 15th percentile, then they can continue homeschooling as normal, but a second test must be taken the following year. Now, if the second test score is the same or higher, then you're in the clear and you return to the normal testing schedule. If the score declined from the previous year, then the superintendent may get involved and require some additional supervision. And then a third test is required within a year. Now, I have rarely heard of this actually happening in Oregon. I'm sure there are some cases. Most of the time, you're not going to have to worry about this at all because homeschoolers score at least 60th percentile or above on average, which is higher than the national norm, which is 50%. So you're really not going to have a lot of students that just score below the 15th percentile, but this process is in place. So if your student scores below the 15th percentile, all is not lost. You just continue homeschooling them as usual. You might want to help them buff up on some of their math and language skills. And then the following year, you just test them again and see how it goes. Some parents choose, if their child is a special needs student, to then implement a PDP. Let's talk about special needs students. Students with special needs do have other evaluation options. You do not have to do standardized testing for them. Now, some parents, in fact, many parents I've spoken to that have students with special needs, if they think that their child may be able to perform at or above the 15th percentile, then they go ahead and do the test. And sometimes you may find testers who provide accommodations. You need to reach out to them and see. And if in that case they are able to do that without too much stress or, discomfort, then you may want to go that route. If not, then you can consider some other options like an IEP through the public school system, although we generally don't recommend that, or the PDP, which is the privately developed plan. This is outlined in Oregon's rules for children with disabilities. And OCEANetwork team members from the Freedom Watch team are actually involved in helping to craft the rules for the PDP because we wanted something that was affordable and flexible and really fit the needs of the child and their developmental process. This provides flexibility and structured support for your students. So we will leave you a link. We'll probably do other episodes, I'm sure, digging into homeschooling students with special needs. But in the meantime, I'll leave you a link in the show notes where you can find more information about homeschooling students with special needs and specifically the evaluation options. Generally speaking, most families do not need to stress about testing. I know it's tempting. I stressed out the first time our kids did testing. Many homeschool students score well above average, like I mentioned. So there are some things you can do to prepare for it. I've seen many parents ask, what skills do I need to make sure my kids are covering, etc. If you are teaching your kids math and language and reading at their developmental level, most likely you are not going to have a problem with the standardized testing. If you really want to prepare, what I would suggest is giving them some light practice with timed tests, familiarizing them with multiple choice formats, doing some practice tests beforehand, letting them know what to expect during the testing process. It does not need to be high pressure or stressful for them. Some kids, I've even had some of my kids who enjoy the process because they get to chat with other kids who are going through the testing process at the same time. Generally, it's going to be a routine administrative step that you just take care of when required. Another question we get about testing is, can we opt out? Or what if I just don't do it? Under Oregon law, testing in the required grades is a part of independent homeschooling. Our current law does not allow for homeschoolers to opt out of the testing requirement. OCEANetwork, I'm just going to give you a little background on our thoughts on testing in general. OCEANetwork believes that testing itself can be a useful educational tool if the parent wishes to use it for that purpose, but we object to it being used as a legal requirement for homeschooling. Our stance is that requiring tests to determine who can homeschool is unnecessary, ineffective, and unfair for many reasons. A few of them being that many homeschoolers already score well above the grade level, and most ESDs only require a small percentage of the test results, meaning the vast majority of families will comply with the testing and not even have to submit it anyway, so it's a waste of time. Another reason is that the ones who do score low, the ones who actually benefit the most from the individualized personal homeschool instruction, can be the most at risk under the current law if their scores don't improve on that schedule, despite homeschooling's overall effectiveness. There's really no credible evidence that testing and other regulations actually improve academic performance of homeschoolers. So you will find OCEANetwork submitting bills to the Oregon legislature to remove such regulations. But at this time, those laws stand, and we generally recommend following them. To not to would invite further scrutiny and potentially expansion of regulation on the homeschool community. So I know I covered a lot, but in summary, you will be testing in grades 3, 5, 8, and 10, assuming that it has been at least 18 months since you withdrew from public school. You want to administer the test by the end of that school year, by August 15th. And you don't need to stress about testing. Remember that the scores only need to be at or above the 15th percentile, and you can do some things to help your child prepare for the test-taking process. Special needs students do have alternative evaluation options available to them as well. If you have specific concerns about your situation, please contact OCEANetwork. We are here to help you navigate these requirements clearly and confidently. Thank you for listening to The Lighthouse. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Lighthouse, Homeschooling in Oregon with OCEANetwork. Don't forget to send us your questions, and make sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with other Oregon homeschool families. Join us again next time as we continue encouraging and informing homeschoolers across Oregon for the Lord Jesus Christ.